We make snap judgments all the time. I mean, in the blink of an eye, right? We decide who to trust, who to maybe keep our distance from, who to listen to. But what if those split-second decisions are being guided by these invisible biases we don't even know we have? Today, we're going to dive deep into the sociology behind those snap judgments. We're talking ageism, lookism, and racism, and how they shape our world in ways we barely even notice.
So to kick things off, let's get a little personal because honestly, these huge ideas, they almost always start with something that's happened to us.
I mean, really think about it for a second. Have you ever walked into a room and just felt the energy shift? Or had someone make a huge assumption about you before you even opened your mouth? How did that feel? Did it make you, I don't know, change how you acted in that moment?
And you know what? That feeling is super common. Picture it. You're at your first job, you're excited, you want to prove you belong there, but you just keep getting hit with this wave of skepticism. That's a perfect example of ageism at work. It can plant this little seed of self-doubt and make you feel like you have to work twice as hard just to be taken seriously.
Or how about this one, based on appearance? This quote just perfectly captures that feeling of being, well, completely overlooked, of being seen as less important or less interesting just because of what you're wearing. It's like this invisible social currency. And feeling invisible when you're surrounded by people, man, that can feel incredibly lonely.
And here, the judgment is based on race. This experience isn't just about feeling a little awkward. No, this is about being treated like you're a threat. That feeling of being unfairly targeted stirs up this mix of anger and frustration and just this deep sense of injustice. That is a heavy, heavy weight to carry around.
So these feelings are totally real, right? And what's cool is that sociology actually gives us the language to understand them. By putting a name to these judgments, we can start to see how our own personal stories are actually part of these much, much bigger social patterns. All right, first up, ageism. And this is not just about being disrespectful to older folks. It really does cut both ways. It's the assumption that an older employee isn't good with technology, or, like we just heard, that a younger worker has no idea what they're doing. Basically, it's any judgment you make based purely on how many birthdays someone's had. Next, we've got lookism. Okay, so this is the bias where our brains totally unconsciously link someone's physical attractiveness with all these positive qualities, like they must be smarter or kinder or more competent. Think about it. A teacher might just assume a well-dressed student is more responsible. It's this unfair advantage or disadvantage that gets handed out in a single glance.
And finally, racism. Now, it's so important to get that this is more than just one person's prejudice. It's often a whole system built on the belief that one racial group is fundamentally different from another. And that belief is then used to justify unequal and discriminatory treatment, just like we saw in that mall security example.
Okay, so definitions are great and all, but seeing these biases play out in the real world, that's where it gets really interesting. Social experiments are amazing because they basically pull back the curtain on how we all behave when we don't think anyone's watching. Let's see what happens. For our first case study, picture this. We're at a food truck. The setup is super simple. Let's just see if people get treated differently based on their age when they try to order some food. And wow, the difference was immediate. Younger customers, they were served with a smile, no problem. But when older customers walked up, they were dismissed, they were ignored, or in some cases, just flat out told no. The difference in how they were treated was just so stark. And that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? This kind of discrimination often just flies right under the radar in our day-to-day lives. By making it so obvious, the experiment forces us to look at a bias we might not have even noticed. And that awareness, that's always the first step.
All right, let's switch gears to our next experiment, which is all about the power of lookism. For this one, an actor was made to look unattractive and then attractive to see how total strangers would react when they asked for a little bit of help.
And you guessed it, the results were just, wow, instant and shocking. When the participant looked unattractive, people mostly ignored them or were kind of rude. But when they looked attractive, suddenly everyone was eager to help, offering directions, a friendly smile, you name it. Same person, different outfit, completely different world. And this shows us something so important. This isn't just about who's popular. This bias literally affects who gets help, who gets attention, and when you think about it, who gets opportunities in life. Recognizing that is absolutely key if we actually want to create a fair playing field.
Okay, our last experiment, and I'll be honest, this one can be pretty tough to watch. It involves kids, and it looks at how adults react when they see them seemingly vandalizing a car. The only difference? The race of the children.
The results here are just deeply unsettling. When white children were seen doing this, adults would often stop and try to help them, assuming they were maybe locked out of the car or in some kind of trouble. They were met with kindness. But when black children were in the exact same situation, doing the exact same thing, they were either ignored or treated with suspicion.
And that's what's so powerful about this experiment. It shows how unconscious racism actually works. It's often hidden, sometimes even from the people acting on it, but it is so pervasive. It shows how our brains make these split-second assumptions about who's innocent and who's a threat, and why recognizing that deep-seated bias is absolutely vital for any kind of equity. So, we've seen the feelings, we've got the definitions, and we've watched the experiments. But how does a simple thought in someone's head actually turn into a discriminatory action? Well, it turns out there's a pretty clear pattern that connects them. It actually follows a pretty clear path. See, it all starts with a stereotype. That's just an oversimplified belief, like young people are inexperienced. That belief can then lead to prejudice, which is a negative feeling. And finally, that feeling can result in discrimination, the action, like not hiring someone. It's a straight line, from a thought to a feeling to an action. So how fast does this whole process even start? Get this. Research shows that our brains make these initial judgments about someone, like are they trustworthy, are they competent, in less than 100 milliseconds. That's a tenth of a second. Before you've even consciously processed what you're looking at, your brain has already fired off a judgment. It's wild.
And that brings us to what I think is the most important part of this whole thing. Knowing all this stuff isn't just about being book smart. It's about taking that knowledge and using it to see the world, and maybe even ourselves, in a new way. So this is the question I really want to leave you with. Now that you know the pattern, now that you can spot that path from stereotype to discrimination, where do you see it? In the news, at your job, at school, maybe even in your own split-second thoughts? Because as every single one of those experiments showed us, awareness is the first and honestly, the most powerful step towards making a real change.